Claire. We keep calling them the other Claire, depending on which one we're talking about in the first place. But this one in this case is Claire Byrne. She is director of the Belfast branch of Women Who Code and recent winner of a UK-wide Tech Women 50 award. And she is going to be talking about how she does all that as a time-travelling productivity wizard. So that's what she's going to be up to.
Have you ever wished that you had the power to manipulate time? Well, what if I told you that with the right mindset, you could? I'm sure we're all familiar with this situation. You're playing on your phone, you have been for 5 minutes, and you look at your clock, and suddenly an hour has gone by. And that report you had to write tonight, that's just not going to happen. Time flies when you're having fun. No, really, that's a scientific fact. The more absorbed you are in something, the faster your internal clock will go, and you'll just lose time like that. So what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with chilling on social media, but maybe not if it's going to impact something that you have to do tomorrow, or if you're not going to get a report done because of it. There was a brilliant experiment done in the 1960s by a social psychologist, an American, called Walter Mischel, and it studied the effects of sacrificing shorter-term impulses for greater visions or goals. So the gist of it is this. A group of kids from the same socioeconomic background were taken into a room, one by one, and each given this scenario. So they could have one marshmallow to eat now, or they could wait an unspecified length of time alone in the room for a researcher to come back, and then they could have 2 marshmallows. So for a kid, this is pretty difficult, but it was amazing how some of these kids just managed to control their impulses to ring the bell. And these kids were monitored as they grew up, and it was actually found that on average, the kids who delayed their gratification were of a greater, or on average, greater social and financial standing. So I guess this can be applied today. It's really important to be able to get into the right headspace to delay instant gratification and the dopamine hit of social media for greater goals. So if you need to get something done, just do it. You can aid this by time boxing tasks. By drinking coffee, actually, because that speeds up your internal clock. That's another conversation for another time. And you can just keep an eye on the time as well. That's a really effective way. So I'm going to take up a bit of your objective time today to talk about how you can experience greater productivity both in and outside of the workplace. And as I said, you can make this talk seem as long or as short as you like by paying attention. So the first point, and one that I've actually had to learn through trial by fire, is be kind to yourself. It's always a good day to have a good day. And you can't be kind to others or work effectively with others if you're not kind to yourself and if you're always negative about your own input. There's a great TED speaker called Kristen Neff who has identified 3 components of self-compassion: self-kindness, empathy and humanity, and mindfulness. So self-kindness is pretty obvious. It's being kind to yourself. But there's a few key points here. Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure, I've done this so wrong, you can reframe that, catch your negative thinking, and reframe it to, okay, that didn't work this time, but I worked hard and I'll do better. So mindfulness, I'm sure you've all heard the term recently. It's being bandied about like nothing. This offers a way to put perspective on your problems and basically make your problems meta. So one very good technique I've learned for doing this is imagine your situation is being experienced by a character in a fiction book. That allows you to sort of step back from your reactive and hot emotions in the moment and to calculate what you're going to do in a more cool and logical way. So when you're struggling, I guess you need to ask yourself some questions. What do I need? How do I care for myself already? Can I do that? And what would I say to a friend who was facing this situation? Would I be really critical of them? Maybe not. Because it's really common to only care for yourself because you're feeling bad. And there's a real difference. You should really do this whenever you're, well, all the time, to stop yourself from feeling terrible and stop these situations from arising. So work-life balance, we're all struggling with this all the time. It's really common. And one way to visualize the whole work-life balance thing is the 4 burners theory. Has anyone heard of this before? No? No one? Good. It means I'm telling you something new. So basically, you can visualize your life in these 4 quadrants, and you can visualize your time as being the gas for these burners on this stove. So one quadrant is your health, one quadrant is your work, one quadrant is your family, and one quadrant is your friends. So as a human, obviously your total time and energy output is limited. And you're never ever going to be able to have all 4 of these quadrants of your life fully turned up. And as a result, you might not be able to ever reach your maximum potential in any one of these unless you put your whole time and energy into it. And that's something that you just might need to accept. So whenever I'm struggling or for time or something important is coming up, I find this visualization really helps me to be able to make a conscious decision about where to place my energy and not feel as guilty about not spending time on other things because I've chosen to turn that particular burner down for a while. It also helps you to focus on the positive things that you've been doing with your time rather than the negative things that you're not doing. So, for example, I don't feel guilty about not being an Olympic skier because I haven't poured all my time into my health burner. And instead, I would say I have a great family, friends, and work burner. But I've started going to the gym now, it's okay. So what's the best way to handle this work-life balance? So there's a few techniques you can use. You can outsource some of your time. So for example, I outsourced some of my time last night to work on this speech by ordering a Chinese and not cooking. And it was really tasty. Another thing you can do is embrace those time constraints that you do have. So say you can only work from 9 to 5 in a day. Instead of thinking, oh gosh, I have to get so much done, you can be like, right, how can I make the maximum and best use of the time that I do have? Same with family. If you can only see your family for a very short amount of time, say on a Sunday, you can plan activities and make sure you have really, really good quality time with them. And the last thing I would say is that you're allowed to turn those burners up and down as your life changes. Life is full of trade-offs, and you don't have to give up on your dreams forever just because you're focusing on something for a while. But make sure to put your whole self into something for a season if you need to, and then quit. So yeah, this is one of the very hardest things to know, and it's actually something that I've personally struggled with a lot. On one hand, perseverance and grit are key to achieving mastery in any craft. On the other hand, telling someone not to quit ever is really stupid. But if something isn't working, you'll notice that smart people don't repeat it endlessly. They adjust, they pivot, they quit if they need to. And, sorry, I'm just going to take a drink. Like Heather, I swear I'm not a lizard, I'm just thirsty. So how do you know when to quit? I'm going to tell you from my own experience, because I think quitting my first job was one of the best things that I could have done for myself, both for my sanity and just happiness in general. So, do you have a nagging feeling that something just isn't right? Yeah, might want to check that out. But no, yeah, that's really the point. You should probably evaluate where you are and explore what's happening. If you feel like something isn't right or you're not happy all the time, well, you don't have to be happy all the time, but like if you're constantly unhappy and downtrodden and tired, maybe it's time to explore why that is. I'll send you the slides. Another time to know when to quit is when your goals, your personal goals, just aren't aligning with the tasks that you're doing at the minute. And you need to maybe ask yourself, is there a future where you are at the minute? Or do you need to switch and change it up and do something that you're more passionate about with your life? And the third and final thing, which I would say is most important when it comes to knowing when to quit, is looking at your health. So I believe that your body is the greatest mirror of your subconscious mind. And from my own experience, if your body is aching, if your friends and family are telling you to slow down, and if you're having weird dreams about your CEO shaking his head at you and going, that's just not good enough, then it's probably time to quit, or at least have a look at where you are. So disclaimer, this isn't by any means a formula of how to know when to quit. This is my own experience just. And just because something is challenging doesn't mean you should quit. Because humans just love challenges, don't they? But only if they're within an optimal zone of difficulty. So imagine that you're playing a game of tennis against a 5-year-old. It quickly becomes boring because it's just too easy. Now picture the scene. You're playing a tennis match against Roger Federer. It becomes discouraging because it's just too hard. But tasks and challenges on the borderline of that are extremely motivating. What if you're playing a tennis match against your friend and you can win this? You know you can. That's incredibly motivating, and you're going to play that game and keep playing it until you win. And this is called the Goldilocks Rule. Tasks above your abilities, way above your abilities, are discouraging. Tasks way below your abilities are too easy, boring. But tasks just beyond your horizon, well, they're really motivating. So you need to have difficulty in your tasks that is just beyond your horizon, but you also need to measure your performance in the moment and measure your progress as you're going along. So whether this is, for example, completing JIRA tickets, having regular performance reviews, or regular code reviews, this is a good way to maintain long-term motivation while you accomplish these challenges. Wanting to improve your life, that's easy. Sticking with it, as we all know, is really hard. So set goals that are just manageable, track your progress as you go along, and then repeat this, because it'll really help with long-term motivation. Because we all have things we want to improve, don't we? And many people will say that starts with setting a specific and actionable goal. And I think there's actually a better way to do things, though. And it all comes down to the difference of goals and systems. So, for example, if... Whoops. I'm just going to be a lizard again. So, for example, if you're a runner, your goal is to run a marathon, but your system is the training that you do week on week to be able to get to this stage. If you're a software engineer, your goal is to write a kick-ass system, but your process or your system to get to this is learning the techniques and tools you need, learning programming languages, learning about design patterns. So here's a question. What if you ignore those goals and only focus on systems? Would you still see results? I think so. And this habit of goal setting that we have, or culture of goal setting we have, I think is a problem, because we're constantly thinking, I'm not good enough yet, but I will be once I reach that goal. Happiness is always on the other side of a milestone, and when we reach that milestone, well, we're just changing the goalposts of like what we need to do to be happy. We're setting ourselves up for failure automatically. As a society, I think we've pushed happiness and fulfillment over the cognitive horizon, And that's not really the best, is it? And this is why systems and processes will always be better than goals when it comes to like helping yourself improve. Goals are short-term, processes are long-term, and the process always wins, because pursuing happiness inch by inch, rather than leaping at imagined targets, can lead to a life that's really worth living. And in the end, the first thing that's stopping you is you. Thank you. I'm Claire Byrne.
Fantastic. Thanks, Claire.